Just to let you know, I've just started the broadcast.
Thank you, Sadie. That's kind. I think we're just one cabinet member down at the minute, so as we have to pay him by the minute, I'm quite happy if he comes in at past. Evening, Mark.
Good evening, Ken.
Thank you. Good evening, Cabinet. Good evening, officers. Good evening to the general public who are viewing in, and to councillors who will be joining us, members of the public, shortly. Before the meeting officially starts, I have a set of announcements to make. I'm Councillor Rattigan, the Leader of the Council and Chair of Cabinet, and I would like to welcome everyone to the meeting, which is being held virtually and in accordance with the Council's rules for virtual meetings, which reflect the published government regulations. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and will be also available to view after the meeting has finished. Councillors are reminded that although this meeting is being held remotely, they are regarded as being present in the meeting of the Council, and they should observe the normal rules of behaviour under the Member Code of Conduct and not allow members of their household to distract them during the course of the meeting. Can members ensure that their mobile phones are now switched off or on silent? Members of the Cabinet will turn their video link on during the meeting and keep their microphones muted unless they are invited to speak by myself as the Chair. Members are reminded that if they switch off their video link or move away from the camera, they will be treated as leaving the meeting and will not be able to take part in any vote taken on that item under discussion. Members can indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand and should only speak when I, as Chair, invite them to do so. Officers present will only switch on their video link where they wish to be invited to speak by me as Chair. As Chair, I will confirm the name of any visiting speaker at the appropriate time in the agenda and who will address the committee by audio link. Councillors should declare that they are leaving the meeting and switch off their video link if they have a disclosable pecuniary interest or other personal interests in an item on the agenda. Councillors can switch on their video link when the next agenda item. Voting will be taken on a roll call, and I will confirm the recommendations proposed to the committee before the voting begins. Can each member indicate whether they are for or against the recommendation or whether they wish to abstain? Hopefully we'll not have any IT issues, but can I remind councillors that if their connection is lost, they should immediately advise Democratic Support Officer and use their meeting link to access once again. So welcome to tonight's meeting. I have no apologies for absence on the agenda as it stands. Are there any declarations of interest in any matter in our agenda currently? No. There are no urgent items that have been passed to me as Chair of Cabinet. I now move to agenda item 4, which were the minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of December. There we found on your agenda papers 5 to 14. Are you happy with the accuracy of those minutes? I take from the nodding that is so. We move now to the substantive pieces of our agenda tonight. First up is the medium-term financial strategy and the budget update report of 21-22 to 24-25. Before I invite the Cabinet Member Hannah Golding to introduce this, I'd like to put on record my thanks to the finance team, but especially to our 151 officer for the work involved in providing us with this robust MTFS and the budget update. So my thanks go on record here. Hannah Golding.
Thank you, Leader. The report before us this evening provides an update for the Council's medium-term financial strategy and to the Cabinet's budget proposals for the next financial year. We consulted on the proposals between November and January and have listened to all the feedback given. Overall, residents are supportive of our approach to budget setting this year and recognise the increasing financial challenges that are impacting upon the Council. However, some proposals were strongly objected to and none clearer than the introduction of charges for disabled parking. I am therefore pleased to say that this proposal and charges for pest control, as well as a phased reduction for parish council grass cutting, have all been removed from the updated budget proposals. We have been able to remove these proposals and still achieve a balanced budget, which in the challenging circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic is an excellent outcome for our residents. Through it, we will continue to ensure our residents are well supported and support our economic recovery in the future. The Council plan remains as a focus point for prioritising our spending against what matters to residents, and this includes but is not limited to weekly bin collections, supporting vulnerable residents and working to eradicate rough sleeping, keeping our neighbourhoods safer through community safety patrols, and making sure that the Borough Council itself is as efficient as possible and is providing services to residents in a flexible and accessible way. And these priorities were supported in consultation responses. We are able to do this in part because we receive a significant proportion of annual income from returns on investments, both Treasury and also through the property management strategy, which is on our agenda later this evening as well. We will also, through our budget proposals, maintain our position as a low tax council. Our proposed average rise of just £5 will still be one of the lowest in Hampshire. And we are able to keep the burden on council taxpayers low because we ensure that we make our other money work hard. And indeed, the council tax makes up a very small part of the council's annual income. And we, in addition to this, we also continue to have a generous council tax support scheme and have offered extra support during the pandemic. I therefore support the changes to the budget proposals and ask that Cabinet approve them this evening and also recommend them for full council for approval at the end of this month.
Thank you very much. We have now 3 visiting councillors who'd like to make representations or comments to us. They have 4 minutes each, and I'd like to call forward Councillor Kim Taylor to be our first of our visiting councillors. Councillor Taylor. Sorry for that.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Just a little bit of a lag there.
No.
I'm pleased to see that as part of the revisions, a number of things were removed, essentially, particularly in relation to disabled parking. However, there are some other things that I'd just like to give you the opportunity to reconsider before you make your final decisions. And 2 of those things are really very small matters, but really quite important to our community. And those relate to the increasing charges by nearly 50% for those over 60, but not yet in receipt of state pension for allotment charges, and also the proposed charges to increase by 20% each year for the next 3 years to the outdoor bowling. Now, I mean, these are quite mean-spirited proposals, to be honest with you, because both of these activities are important activities, particularly for our older age groups to get involved in terms of being fit and so on. And I think that outdoor activities, particularly with allotments, are even more important at this particular point in time. And I also think we should be bearing in mind the fact that the Bowls Club will not have actually been operating for the last year, so they won't have been receiving any income, and their client group are generally on a fixed income, and therefore for the club itself, this is quite a significant increase at a time when they haven't been able to operate for a year, and their client base are going to be very keen as soon as they've had their vaccines and they're feeling safe to get out there and to do some social activity, having faced the majority of the brunt of isolation at a difficult time. So I would ask you really to consider, since these are fairly small and minor items, to either remove them or at least put them back for a year to give the clubs the opportunity to actually recover some of its income from having been closed for an extended period of time. Also, I'd like you to think about carefully the bin charges and the bulk waste charges, particularly in relation to in respect of bins, the reduction of the concession for those people who are in receipt of benefits. I mean, I note that what we're trying to do is to put our charges up to make us in line with Hart, but I'm just wondering why Hart doesn't come down to us, and I think that would be more appropriate. We're actually looking at a new 240 litre bin being £69 and a replacement being £40, and no concessions for those people being on benefits. I mean, you may not know or understand that the basic monthly universal credit allowance is £409. You're actually talking about in excess of a whole week's worth of money from somebody who is in receipt of benefits if they happen to need to replace their bin or get moved and there is no bin on the property. At the moment, you can actually buy bins online from between £30 to £45, so we're charging well over what is commercially acceptable, and there's already a sort of fairly lively market developing on eBay for used bins as a result. So I think that you know, really it would be good to think again, particularly in relation to the burden that would be carried by people who are in receipt of universal credit, by the reduction and the removal essentially of the concession rate. In respect of aligning us with Hart, that does seem to be very unfair. Their average salaries are more than ours in Basingstoke. Their average house prices are more than ours in Basingstoke. Our unemployment levels are higher. You know, there's a whole variety of differences which would suggest that they are a much more affluent area than we are. And I don't think most people think that levelling up is about rising, you know, your charges to a higher level that other people can afford when we can't here. If anything, if we're looking to align fees, then Hart ought to reduce. In terms of bulk waste, the charges are now excessive, increases of up to 180% in some cases. I've reviewed the comparison between those and commercial rates, and we're getting extremely close to being more expensive and providing a less quick service. This is going to cause us a real problem, because I think that essentially we won't get the level of income that you're expected through these increased charges. And so I think consideration to increasing the risk reserves to counter that is really important. And also I think the need to consider the black market in respect of waste management. And this isn't just about increasing tipping. What actually happens in a black market, you know, in respect of waste is pretty similar in terms of the criminal activity that is extremely well organised, that Councillor Rafael will know and understand about in respect to county lines. I have actually observed this in another local authority at first hand, where people who are vulnerable, single mums, young people, people who are in difficult financial straitened circumstances, get employed basically by gangs who are then used to transport waste rubbish, paid very little money to do so in their domestic vehicles. Now, I've actually seen that actually in happening in a local authority and observe this direct. And I think that we may not realise that we could very easily create that kind of waste black market in Basingstoke by these excessive charges alongside tipping. So I really would ask that we really consider, particularly in relation to concessions, both on replacement and new bins, and in respect of bulky wastes, that really we shouldn't be charging people who are in these circumstances unless we want to see some real increase in criminal activity in this area. I think those are the main things that I really wanted to bring to your attention about the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. That was well represented for the people in allotments and for perhaps changes on the bins. Does anyone want, from my cabinet, wish to answer any of that? Perhaps allotments from Mark or bins from Hayley, perhaps?
Yeah, I'm trying to find
Councillor Eashes.
Sorry, I couldn't find my virtual hand. I was thinking I was on Teams, apologies. Yeah, just on the bin charges, I take on board what's being said, but I think it's important to make clear all of our recycling bins are still free. You can have free glass boxes. Our green bins are free. We also have to bear in mind most people buy a new bin when they're buying a new house, and we need to give thought to developers being told that why aren't they providing them. I think many years ago they did, they don't now, but they're providing the property, they should provide the bins. It shouldn't be a cost on us. Our charges are, even though aligning with Hart, if you look at other authorities, we're still reasonable in that regard, and it's a one-off cost. In relation to the bulky waste charges, I mean, this is a service that we offer as an extra. It works for people, for some people, and it's a great service. The charges are still extremely reasonable given the service that the resident is getting. I know that there's arguments over HWRCs, but since we've had the appointment system at the one in Wade Road, then things have been much better, less queuing. Again, we're still having problems with people making appointments and not turning up, and it would be great if that didn't happen, because then there'd be more space for the people that really do want to use it. And then in relation to there was one other thing, what was it? It's gone. Oh yeah, the illegal waste. I'm fully aware of all of that, but we've done extremely good work, and comms do a lot of work regularly on tackling illegal waste carriers that don't have licenses. We've done lots of Facebook campaigns on that, which have had lots of hits and really got the message out there that, if you are going to get a third party to take your waste, and that should be with somebody with a proper license. So all of that is being taken into account, but I still think we're reasonable on all the points that we've put forward in the budget tonight, having balanced it against the HWRCs and the other options that are out there.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. Cabinet, any more questions before I call another councillor to address us? Nothing. Then I'll invite Councillor Paul Harvey and welcome him back as a group leader to Cabinet. Councillor Paul Harvey, you have 4 minutes.
Good evening, am I on?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, and can I thank the officers for the time and the effort that's been put into creating the budget. I echo what you said to start with. It's never a straightforward thing putting together a budget as complicated as ours, and I appreciate their time and effort. I also appreciate your time and effort as the Cabinet, because it isn't easy. I've been in your shoes and I do understand it, and it is never easy. And we aren't always going to agree, are we, on every detail that is in the budget, but I appreciate the difficulty, particularly this year, of what it's meant to try to put a budget together in the circumstances that we're all facing. I don't want to repeat what others have said, but I would like to raise with you a couple of concerns, if I may. Firstly, around the lack of response to consultation. I was disappointed because I did put in emails with colleagues in response to your budget. I've had some officer response, which I was grateful for. I didn't get a response from the Cabinet themselves, and I was disappointed in that. I would have welcomed some sense of dialogue following those emails and consultation, but we can't fix that now. That's history, that's gone. But I would just like to say that I would have really appreciated a chance to raise these issues with you before now, and I have done, because I put them in emails to you. And going forward, if we could look at that and how you communicate with us as councillors in that consultation period, I would appreciate that. Can I raise with you the issue of redundancies? And in particular, this budget's proposals where they may be carried forward, and I'd like to clarify that with you in terms of frontline services, and in particular the ops teams, the specialist teams and grounds teams. If it is the case that there is an intention to make either staff redundant or posts redundant, and I'm conscious there are two different things there, could we have that clarified? And if so, can I petition you please not to do that, particularly in those services? I would speak to all staff not being made redundant, but I feel those frontline services where our residents see those members of staff directly either on the ground doing the work they're doing or being called out to do work is incredibly important. And I really would petition you to think again on those particular redundancies. And again, the reason why I make that argument is because I think we see the growing amount of development in our town and borough where those teams are being asked to cover far more geography than they have done historically. We're not seeing a commensurate rise in their resources, I believe, from what I can see, that would meet that demand. And it's not just about technology. We can give them the best kit in the world, but there does come a point when the kit needs to be actually handled by somebody to do the work to achieve the level of standards that we want residents to see. And I think that is an issue where perhaps we are at a tipping point where that needs to be given greater consideration. I think that is important to look at going forward. And can I also say, in terms of charging for rural car parks and the other issues, whether or not that matter has been resolved and reconsidered? I appreciate the point about disabled parking. I appreciate the point about parish grass cutting, but can I raise that issue in terms of rural car parking, particularly in town centres and village centres, in the context of COVID recovery, and how those may well be of benefit to those businesses if we were able to do that? I know that's asking for money, and at the end of the day, we need to balance all of this. So I appreciate how difficult it would be necessarily to achieve them, but I'm asking you to consider them nonetheless. And as I say, thank you for your time this afternoon. Then I would say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. It's good to see you back. Councillor Eachus, you want to pick up a point about the ops team, I think?
Yes, thank you, Leader. It was really just to say there's no intention of redundancies. They're vacant posts, and to say we do see the ops team as extremely important and part, of our, a huge part of the resident services that we offer. We are investing into that team. We are developing a new depot at Down Grange to take on board the fact that the borough is growing and that we'll have, bigger operations moving forward. We are enhancing the welfare facilities at Wade Road. We're putting in a new washdown area, and all of that investment shows how important these how much value we give the ops team. And these reference to redundancies is incorrect, because although there's reduced grass cutting, we're then putting up the grounds maintenance team. So they're vacant posts that will not be filled. And if we need them, as the borough grows, then obviously we would do that. So
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I think that's everything on that. Thank you.
Councillor Ruffell, you have your hand raised.
Leader, thank you. Can I respond also to Councillor Harvey? He raised the same point, I think, at EPH when we were talking about the natural environment team. And I tried to reassure him then that I didn't think that it was within my part of the portfolio that his concerns should be addressed, but perhaps he now perhaps has found the target, and it's not me. I hope that's correct, but if he does have an ongoing concern with my part of my portfolio, please raise it again with me. But I don't think it is. As I said then, it's a different part, and I can't, it doesn't affect my portfolio, I don't believe, in its capacity or its delivery of what it's seeking to achieve. Thank you for
Councillor. Councillor Harvey, just to say to you that we are having weekly meetings with the unions to reassure them on the breadth of any possible redundancies and how people could be redeployed within the organisation to limit any losses that those individuals may suffer in terms of that job or post to be redeployed. So we are doing everything we can to make sure that there is a smooth progression to a more efficient council, and one that responds to the needs of a changing borough, one that is agile and adaptive to a world that has, over the last year and many other years, changed in how we as a council deliver service. So we will continue to look at all of those positions, but the reality is we are in a changed world and we have to change as an organisation. So I'm supportive of where we are on the budget proposals. Can I now call forward Councillor Andy McCormick, who has 4 minutes to put his points to us.
Thank you, Leader. Well, hopefully I won't need 4 minutes because much of what I wanted to say was said already. Just picking up on the shuttle bus, which I understand is had got the sword of Damocles hanging over it. Just wanted to understand the rationale behind discontinuing the shuttle bus when we've declared a climate emergency and we're looking to get people out of cars, and we're also looking at ways and means to get people in and out of the town centre and to the leisure park. I would see it as an opportunity to put in a green bus route with electric buses and try and promote Basingstoke and drive up recovery in 2 key areas of the town.
Mark Raffel, do you want to talk us about that transport piece?
Yes, of course, Leader. Thank you. I dare say Councillor McCormick knows the answers I'm about to give, but hey, let me give them. The fact is that the shuttle bus doesn't do what it says on the tin. It causes people to drive into the centre of Basingstoke, creating pollution, traffic congestion, and then they park, and then they go on a short distance, and then they use other transport, or they've found their destination internally. Many of the people who use the shuttle bus come from outside of the borough in the first place. So it's predominantly not helping the borough residents, either by providing them with transport or taking people off the road, or having a positive benefit that reduces air pollution. And so its time is well and truly overdue. The timing of this particular change, though, is at a time when the topic of mass rapid transport coming from the vicinity of Junction 7, as I'm sure the councillor knows, it is a leading item in every transport strategy, every development discussion to do with development around Junction 7 that has been going on for at least the last 12 months, even if not much longer than that. And we're hoping as an administration that we can plan for some form of mass rapid transport from the vicinity of the area around Junction 7 into the centre of Basingstoke that will then satisfy all the issues that we're looking for. So taking many people off out of their cars onto something that is clean and transports them in a cost-effective way that hopefully does not have substantial public subsidy, such as buses currently do. And so we have destinations potentially at the centre of Basingstoke, obviously, and destinations being planned for near and around Junction 7, which, of course, visions around Junction 7 have been looked at. And obviously, I've got a leading role in that. So let me reassure him, we are moving in that direction slightly more rapidly than we have done in recent years. So it's a question of timing. And when the council has to make decisions about funding, the shuttle bus was right at the top of the list as being uneconomic, bad for the environment, and under-delivering on what it was originally meant to achieve. So that's why the cut is coming.
Thank you for that, Councillor Raffel. Cabinet, any other question, any points to Councillor McCormick on this? If not, then I would move to the recommendations to Cabinet on page 16 and 17 in your agendas. There is a full list there. I'm not going to read them all out because, as you probably can see from the 2 pages, there's 23 items on this. Just to say items 1 to 6 are for Cabinet to note. From 7 right through to 12, it's a Cabinet recommendation to Council. 13 and 14, Council determines, and 15 through to 23, the Council approves. So they will all be moved to our Council meeting later this month. I hope that we will listen to anything between now and then, as Councillor Harvey has talked about dialogue, and we'll certainly take on the points that Councillor Kim Taylor and Councillor McCormick have made to us, and those of our public between now and then. But as I have already alluded to in the introduction that I had, it is an excellent report from our 151 officer and her team, and it is robust in all of the things that we would expect our budget to have. So, Cabinet, can I get you to agree those recommendations and those moves across?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Then we'll move now to agenda item 6, which is the capital programme update and the strategy report, which has been prepared for us by our 151 officer again. Hannah, will you do a small introduction, and then I will call forward the Councillor McCormick to speak on this item.
Absolutely, Leader. It will be a brief introduction because I know we've got quite a lot to get through this evening. So the capital programme is an important part of our spending, and it's a very key way in which we support and enable our communities to develop the infrastructure that they need to thrive. It's therefore very positive to see worked up schemes going into the capital programme to be delivered over the coming years, and that overall an increase of over £20 million is proposed to be added to the programme. These schemes are varied but are designed to support our local communities and economy. From CCTV to deter fly tipping, to upgrading play areas, to providing move-on accommodation for people who have been rough sleeping, it demonstrates that we are putting our capital finances to hard work to meet local needs. I am also pleased to note that our capital programme is fully funded up to 2024-25, as this gives us the security we know that we can deliver on key schemes that are important to our residents. I will also ask Cabinet to note the rephased requests that are set out in section 6. This past year has understandably been a very challenging one to deliver our previously agreed schemes, and therefore I am supportive of these recommended changes. In addition, tonight we are asked to recommend the reviewed capital programme strategy to full council. This underlying capital programme strategy is a vital part of how we finance, allocate and manage the capital investment and prioritise our spending. So I'm pleased to see the updated strategy, which is included in Appendix 4, and I would recommend the entirety of this report to my Cabinet colleagues.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to ask Councillor Andy McCormick to give us 4 minutes on his views on the capital programme, the update. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. So I won't need 4 minutes again. I'll be as brief and to the point as I possibly can. 3 questions, basically. The first one, have we got money for the ice rink? If we needed to put money aside, where would it come from? And I'll accept a written answer for that if that's too detailed for tonight. Also, just to get some confirmation, we put 2 amounts of approximately £1 million in for parking and climate emergency as budget amendments. My understanding is that they have been rolled forward because they couldn't be implemented this year, mainly due to COVID. And can we expect similar increased investment going forward? Because the clock's ticking on climate change. So if anything, we need to have increased investment going forward, but I wouldn't want to bind the hands too much with provision, but I think we need an acknowledgement that we do need to step up investment. Similarly, have we got any provision for local energy initiatives? Because I think that's quite an exciting thing going forward, especially in the rural areas. There may be things that we can do to help bring that change about. And that's all I have to say. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. We will, with your indulgence, take forward a written answer on the ice rink. But just to say, we do plan for emergencies. I'm not saying that the ice rink is an emergency, but we do plan for emergencies. And as always, we will be flexible in what we will fund as time goes by. Councillor Isaac, do you want to say anything more on the ice rink issue?
I don't actually, Leader. I think you've responded as far as we can this evening on that particular point. Thank
you very much. On the climate emergency, Councillor Eaches or Councillor Raffel, do you want to say anything more on that? Although we have a paper later on which will cover off some of our ambitions with that regard.
Yeah, I mean, we do have that coming up, which I can introduce. I mean, on the costs, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, we're going to use that for that climate emergency, because it cuts across every single portfolio. So something that you might do in your portfolio might not necessarily have green on the money, but actually when you look at the proposal and everything behind it in the initiative, it has got carbon benefits. So it is difficult just to say, but absolutely, as a cabinet, and we discuss this all the time in all our cabinet briefings and our discussions, how important climate change is. And I think, you know, it's really reassuring residents and other members that that is what we are doing, and we're not, you know, we want to be ambitious to hit our targets and get the money in to do that.
Thank you for that. Then if we are we content at that? Councillor Golding, you want to add something?
Sorry, I just wanted to come in with the technical point that yes, the parking funding is being rolled forward and additional money is being added for the future year.
Thank you, that's very useful. I'm sure we'll find that beneficial. Cabinet, do you want to make any other points to the capital budget? Councillor Bynes, sorry.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to say something very briefly, which is capital investment programme of 90 million over the next 4 years is fundamentally envy of our neighbours, and that shouldn't go unsaid.
Yes, but yeah, I agree, and our neighbours are jealous of what we are, our ambition, but we need to make sure that we deliver on our ambition, and I think Councillor McCormick is right to hold us to that. So yeah, I look forward to being held to account on that. If I move now to the recommendations before us on page 214, is recommended to Cabinet, items 1 to 5, and the Cabinet recommends to Council 6 to 11. They are available to be seen. Are we in agreement that these move forward to Council?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I move now to item number 7, which is the property investment strategy. We have heard from Councillor Golding about how important sweating our money and making sure it works hard when many of us have been on furlough, to make sure that our council tax burden is not too heavy on our residents. Councillor Isaac, you're going to introduce this to us, this paper.
Thank you, Leader. Good evening, Cabinet and officers. This report sets out our proposed strategy for the property portfolio for 2021 to 2022. Property provides 12.39% of all our income, and that's something in the order of £15.54 million a year. So it's a significant contributor to our ability to provide good services. So following on from the successful investment of 32.49 million in purchasing additional income generating commercial assets in the borough via the property investment strategy, this plan focuses on a number of key priorities aimed at ensuring that we have a property portfolio that is more balanced across sectors, retail, industrial, offices, of better quality, offers better opportunities for rental growth, and is more defensive and is less management intensive. To help us make these improvements, we've appointed JLL, who are one of the UK's leading property advisors. And they're going to be working with officers on evaluating our assets and looking at underperforming properties that we might seek to dispose of in the future, and also enable new development of existing but outmoded buildings and land, such as the new St Modwyn Park in Jays Close, which is going to provide new industrial units up to 200,000 square feet this year, and in so doing, creating something in the order of 250 job opportunities. And that's why it's very important that we look at property as not just providing income, but also using that asset to enable us to bring in new investment and provide new jobs at a very difficult time for people because of the COVID emergency. So it's important that we make our property portfolio work hard, and one of the improvements that will be coming through this year will be that we'll be benchmarking our performance against other councils' property portfolios, and also more generally against a UK property index. Now, there's also work to be done on improving the environmental performance of the portfolio, including the use of renewable energy, better insulation and energy generation. So there's a lot of work to do for the property team if it's going to continue to perform well. So that's...
Thank you for that very comprehensive thing. I'd now like to call forward again Councillor Andy McCormick. You have 4 minutes.
I unmute myself. Okay. Well, very encouraged to hear that we're looking at the environmental performance of the portfolio. I think that's really important going forward. As a borough, we've got this 2025 deadline to be carbon neutral, and we also want the entire rest of the borough, the residential and business private aspects, to be carbon neutral by 2030. And while it's pleasing to note we potentially have 250 jobs at St Modwyn, I understand that scheme might be before DC before us tomorrow. That has to be considered in the round. We've lost nearly 2,500 retail jobs, so I think we've still got a lot of work in front of us to try and get people back into work, and also attracting quality, higher paying jobs, professional jobs into the town. I hope we can build on the fact that we're the 4th largest expanding tech hub in the country to that effect. My first question, I actually have a slightly different figure from the portfolio holder. He mentioned 15.45 million, but on page 166, section 3.2, there's actually a figure of 16.3 million. But what concerns me is the risk, given that 55% of that is industrial, 25% of that is retail, and 14% is office. And all of these things are currently under threat from various aspects: Brexit, COVID, changing ways of working from home. All of these are vulnerable even before COVID. And what risk mitigations are in place? Because losing £15 million of income, that's over 10% of our total income. That's a big hit. That's my first question. The second question, looking at Appendix 1 table on page 277, £8.9 million spent on the Eli Lilly premises, noting that it's going through this month. What sort of investment can we expect for the Aquadrome or the town centre?
Councillor Isaac, do you want to pick up some of those?
Yes, leader, I'll do my best. Wide-ranging questions. So, yes, clearly there's been a big impact of COVID on retail employment, and that's why, as Councillor McCormack knows, the council is leading on a new town centre strategy aimed at ensuring that our town centre flourishes in the future, so that's we have to deal with the sort of huge impacts of things like pandemics, and I think this council is going to be quick in its response in terms of an economic recovery package for our town centre. You referred to the issue of quality jobs. Well, I think again, it's sort of a reflection of what we've been able to achieve is retaining Eli Lilly in the borough, building them a new HQ on Basingview, and ensuring those high quality pharmaceutical industry jobs are staying in the borough. In relation to the sort of vulnerability of the portfolio, I think the advice that we've had from our newly appointed advisors is that we've actually got a very robust defensive property portfolio. And because it's quite heavily weighted towards industrial property, unlike the retail sector at the moment, and perhaps even the offices sector, is actually prospering very well despite the COVID emergency. A lot of companies are wanting to rent warehouse accommodation so that they can distribute goods, companies such as Amazon and so forth. So I think we're well placed happily in terms of the spread of our interests. And then in relation to the Aquadrome, again, there is in the budget that we've been discussing tonight, there is provision to be made for further investment into the Aquadrome to make sure that that Aquadrome continues to be a good facility for our residents.
Thank you for that, John. And I would just like to add the diversity that we've got in our portfolio means that we are robust and agile. Let's be honest, we can change some of what we've got to be something else, so as we can take account of trends. And we're ideally placed for the new free ports that I'm sure will be announced soon, perhaps in Portsmouth and Southampton, in terms of industrial or manufacturing, should that opportunity come to us. So I think, and I believe that we are, our income is secure in the long term. Obviously, there will be some short-term bumps in the road as the economy recovers from the COVID crisis. But I believe that the horizons long term are sunny, and we should be trumpeting how well placed we are, not just for people who are in our accommodation at the moment, but those who are attracted to us as they move out of London and change where they would like to be or be based. So I'm very confident of where we are, and I look forward to an improving structure and an improving income as time goes by. Are we content with that? Any questions to Councillor Isaac from Cabinet? No, then I'll move to page 264, which is the recommendation. The Cabinet agrees that the Property Investment Strategy Annual Property Plan from 21-22 as detailed in our papers. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Now for something that we all hold dear is item 8 on our agenda tonight, which is the adoption of the Climate Change and Air Quality Strategy. This has had a lot of effort put into it, both by the portfolio holder and the officer team. And I would ask Hayley just to introduce it to us.
Thank you, Leader. Oh, apologies, I'm just having problems problems. Here we go. So yes, I'm pleased to be able to bring you today the paper that's before you, and this seeks to adopt the climate change and air quality strategy. So once approved by us, will then go to the full cabinet meeting in February. This strategy represents both the culmination of significant work to date, but it's also the start of further work and action. I do want to thank everybody that's contributed to this. This includes councillors through the members advisory panel, officers from across the council, external consultants that have worked with us, and obviously more importantly, residents and other interested parties. We did have a really good response to our public consultation, so it is obvious that this is a really important issue for our residents. The targets in the declaration, we can't get away from the fact that they are demanding and ambitious, but that's not a bad thing, particularly when we look at the fact of those of government and other partners, and with an aim to be carbon neutral as an organisation by late 2025 and then borough-wide by 2030. We do recognise that the work undertaken to date sets the framework for more actions to be developed and implemented. And if we are to achieve our targets, this will require ongoing resource and commitment in the future. But as I think I said earlier to you, Leader, we are all committed to this as a cabinet, and it's obvious other members are, and working with officers across the council, they are certainly enthusiastic about it. And it's also everybody being able to do their bit and bringing all residents on board as well. To date, we've taken a number of important steps to reduce our emissions. So these include things like moving our electricity supply to green sources, rolling out EV charging points, starting with the new Feathers Yard hub on our campus, and then with lots of plans emerging for chargers elsewhere in the borough. We've introduced electric vehicles for our parking team, and then more broadly, we've been mainstreaming climate change into our decision-making service across the borough, into our development programme for all staff and for councillors. We are also ensuring that climate change is built into other strategy documents and work programmes going forward. So we have done things, but I appreciate there's a long, long way to go. But we have all got that drive and enthusiasm to do that. And I do recommend that full council adopt this strategy in February. And I look forward to working with all of Cabinet, because this cuts across every portfolio, to embed tackling climate change into your portfolios. And as we progress with the adoption of the strategy and agreement of the budgets, we can ensure we build on the good work already underway, but continue to develop the projects outlined in the action plan.
Thank you for that introduction. Unfortunately, as you've alluded to, the public will be interested in this. And tonight, I'm delighted to be joined by two members of the public. Firstly, I'd like to call on Miranda Chubb to have 2 minutes to discuss the climate change strategy and any of her thoughts on what we could do better and what maybe could be added to and what could be dropped, perhaps. Miranda, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for the time and effort taken to develop this climate change strategy, and the action plan is very much appreciated, and all the hard work going on around it. I noticed that the consultation showed that 88.9% of the residents agreed or strongly agreed that tackling climate change and poor air quality should be a key priority, and there's clear local support for action, which is great. The strategy also advises that to meet our targets would require an average annual emissions reduction of 13%, and urgent action is needed, which is good to know. Please, can I just request that the action plan is reviewed and the actions are refined into smart objectives with really, really specific targets and KPIs. Some of the actions do have emissions targets and timescales. However, at the moment, not all of them do have smart, specific measurable targets and metrics and KPIs to help measure our progress towards them. For some, there's no emissions target, or it's just given as medium or low or TBC, and for others, the time frame given is not. I know it's a work in progress, I understand that, but where these things are not well defined, it will be difficult for us to measure progress or know if or when the action has been achieved. It's also not clear whether or not this action plan will result in a 30% emissions reduction for the borough within the year, which is what is stated is needed. So please just asking if the actions in the action plan could be reviewed and made smart and clear objectives and KPIs and set at a level that will definitely achieve that 30% reduction. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hayley, do you want to make any comment to perhaps some quick wins or the targets that Miranda's alluded to?
Yeah, certainly. So it's really thank you to Miranda for her question and her support, and also as well as honest challenge to keep us ambitious. I just want to reiterate the point that I made in introducing this paper and strategy, that the action plan does represent the starting point, and we do intend to, just to reassure Miranda, we do intend to update that annually. We are conscious that there's aspects within the action plan that need further development and detail. What we've tried to do is strike the balance between setting out varied and ambitious actions in a reasonable time frame rather than waiting until all the actions are fully scoped out. The targets we have set ourselves, as we've said throughout, are ambitious and challenging, but it does represent a good opportunity for us. But some of the actions require significant consideration and development to get it right. The action plan will be updated. Additional detail will continue to be added in areas where it is not yet present, and hopefully this will address a number of the concerns that Miranda's raised. We will be monitoring overall progress against our targets by measuring the carbon footprint of the council as an organisation, but also as the borough as a whole, based on the latest available data. And again, in answer to Miranda's question, we will be reporting on that annually. Where possible, carbon emissions reductions resulting from specific actions will also be measured and modelled, as is set out in the plan. But for some actions, it's not always possible to do that, like the rollout of EV charging points. Timeframes for some actions have been affected, unfortunately, because of COVID, particularly where this involves overlap with other strategic reviews and external partners, but officers are progressing everything as soon as they can. We remain open to reviewing actions to ensure they remain fit for purpose and the best way to achieve our aims. We will amend, update or replace actions where this is no longer the case. And we do recognise there is loads of work to do. The adoption of the strategy and action plan represents a shift in our efforts to tackle climate change. We welcome continued engagement throughout the implementation of this action plan, including further suggestions for actions, as well as ways you feel you can contribute to our plans to tackle climate change. We're doing what we can to work with local organisations, and we have got officers that do meet with local organisations regularly, and I know in our map officers have raised this with me. So if there are organisations out there or parish councils that do want to work with us or have ideas, then we are always willing to listen and work with you. We have a team of people that are doing that.
Thank you for that. I'm now going to call forward a face that we haven't seen for a while, but is always welcome to any of our meetings. Martin Heath, you have 2 minutes to address us.
Thanks, Ken. That's very kind. Can I just see if I can get the technology working first, if you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Indeed, thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I think tonight's about opportunity and threats, but it is really encouraging to hear such a number of portfolio holders tonight saying how climate emergency and the risks around it is centre and front of their own thinking. But I think tonight's one of those nights where Cabinet can take a decision that will do no more than to attempt to mitigate risks, or it can, on the other hand, seize an enormous opportunity. And that's an opportunity to create well-paid jobs, to generate new revenues for the council, an opportunity to put Basingstoke at the vanguard of responding to the climate emergency. And not least, it's an opportunity to build back better, to build back better as we move from this crisis to potentially the next. It's an opportunity for the town and the borough to tackle the climate emergency and make us a better and cleaner place to live. Now, I think we don't need to go readdress the issues we face. We all know that it's an emergency. We've seen people like Mark Carney even today say that this climate emergency is probably going to lead to more deaths, and it's not my words but his, than the current crisis. But anyway, back to threats and opportunities. But what's the difference? Well, I'm reminded of a previous life when I was working with a large consulting firm, working with a big client, CEO of a major FTSE 100 company. And I recall to this day, he said, do you know, Martin, a threat is nothing more than the previously missed opportunity. You know, and how right he was. You know, the paper before us tonight can be described as adequate, but only just. But it only really deals with the threats. It also lacks ambition. It has a little vision. It has no costed action plan, which I think the previous speaker made very clear. There's no targets and no one's responsible for delivering them. So it addresses partially the risks and the threats, but it does nothing to look at how we would deliver our carbon neutral Basingstoke by 2030. And the strategy is not going to get us to that vision. Now, I could go through the report line by line. I won't. I'm sure you'll thank me for doing it. In fact, you won't let me. But maybe I could just make one point to illustrate, you know, the challenges we face. And then we can look at the baseline figures that the whole strategy is based on. It's wrong. They underestimate the actual emissions from the borough by 40 or 50%. They don't include emissions from food, from agriculture, from waste. They don't include emissions from air travel. They exclude emissions from shipping. They do not include emissions from goods and services we import. The figures we're using in our strategy are just a mere subset of our actual emissions. Now, if we can't get the starting point right, how can we claim the strategy is going to get us to our destination? We can't, and it won't. Yes, you know, the paper's a fine bit of work, but it needs so much more. So finally, a request. The paper before you tonight is a good start, but it's just that. But please, perhaps send it back to the portfolio holder with a request. Can they come back with something that's a little bit better, a little bit more ambition, and more ambitious? One that sets a vision, that has costed actions, has clear targets, with people taking responsibility for delivering them. And one that looks to seize on the opportunities. Now, I'm happy to work and help with you to do that. And one that would say, unless perhaps I will leave it at that. Happy to work with you, but let's have one that really gets to seize the opportunities that are there. Otherwise, they will become threats. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. That was excellent. Just one point, if I could pick up, you say no one is tasked with delivering this strategy. The reason that no one is because we all are. There is no one in the frame for this. We are all in the frame for this. That includes everybody in the borough and everybody who visits the borough or works here. So that is why no one is in the frame. But Councillor Aegis, do you want to pick up any of the other points that Martin has alluded to? Or shall I move to Tristan because he has his hand raised?
Okay. No, very briefly, just to say, you know, I take on board his comments, but it is making clear this isn't, you know, this is the framework, this is the starting point. We're not saying this is the be all and end all. And I think I made clear when responding to Miranda, this is, you know, we will move forward, things will change. We are reviewing this regularly. There, you know, when big projects come along, and this is just showing our framework, what we want to do, that we want to push this forward, and it will constantly be reviewed and it will be brought to CP each year, etc. So, you know, this isn't just the final bit and that's all we're going to do. There's a lot more to do, and we will be doing that. And as you say, Ken, we'll be doing that. Everybody will be doing that. It's not just me. And all residents, every resident that does their bit, even if it's just one small thing, it all helps.
Brilliant. That is a very sound message that everybody can do something. It doesn't rely on someone doing everything. Councillor Tristan Robinson.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to take a moment to welcome the report, and I think we can all appreciate this is a huge challenge. And I think what's really exciting about the report is to see that we have taken steps already. And in the report, it makes clear that we do need to do more. And I think, as the portfolio holder has said just now, this is a major milestone on the start of a journey. And I take Mr. Heath's point around seizing the opportunities. And I remember discussing some of those opportunities with him 2 years ago at a debate on this very issue. The really important part for me on addressing the climate emergency is ensuring we work with partners, because this issue needs a wider solution. It's much bigger than Basingstoke and Deane, and it's certainly bigger than just the Borough Council, and we can all play our part. This strategy sets out the start of a road. It points towards a point on a map, and it's great to see the signs of progress already, but in the future we must look to work with a range of bodies and stakeholders, including residents, to make sure that we deliver together so that we can all play our part. For me, one of the main themes required is to ensure that climate change is reflected across the new local plan. With our drive to reach net zero locally and nationally, the easiest place to start is those homes and those places that have not been built yet. We need to pioneer new policies through planning to ensure that homes are built in a carbon neutral way and deliver zero carbon in lifetime use, but also to encourage and develop sustainable forms of travel, improve biodiversity so that we're living in partnership with the natural world, and help reduce social and health inequality through the places that we have a role in creating, together with fuel poverty, which affects my portfolio. So I very much welcome this strategy and look forward to working with the Cabinet, councillors and all other stakeholders and residents to develop it for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Cabinet, are there any more points to Mr. Heath? Otherwise, I'll move to councillors who wish to add to this debate. No? Then I invite forward Councillor Harvey. You have 4 minutes again, Paul. Are you with us, Councillor Harvey? Yes. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. What a great place to start. I'll pick up where Tristan left off because I agree with him. And I think that's a good point. This is so cross-cutting. I get the point that this is an action plan that is going to evolve and grow. I would love to have seen it be more ambitious, but I get the point you're making about it being a starting point. And I think the context that I see it in is each of your portfolios, because as Tristram's saying, I see it in the property portfolio in the context of things that we can invest in terms of property to make a difference on energy production or on industrial buildings and so on. I see it in Mark's portfolio in the context of the work that's being done on the local plan and so on and so on. The work we do with waste collection, for example, and how we could push Hampshire into being far better at dealing with the waste we create, we collect. And that context really sits across every single portfolio. It also sits across the rest of us. I get that point about all of us being responsible in the way that we can make a difference, but it does take leadership, and it takes leadership in all organisations, with us leading as the broker as we've always been. We've always been that position of the Borough Council able to broker people doing far more because we can have that leadership role, and I think that's very important to us. The one plea I'd make perhaps, and this is interesting, I guess, how it's going to work across the rest of the authority, is take, for example, our green infrastructure strategy. We've got 35 actions in that green infrastructure strategy that we would like to see being delivered on. Each one of those needs to feed into where does that sit with the climate change strategy, rather than waiting to have a strategy on climate change that sits on a shelf to direct it. Each one of the strategies we have in the borough needs to live and breathe this thing that they then in turn become part of the climate change strategy. You're not just relying on what Hayley has produced with their officer team. I think the context of this is much broader. The transport strategy, you're talking about having, you know, a multifunctional and absolutely brilliant RAS rapid transit system, if that ever comes off. Now that's going to have to feed into how green can that be, rather than it being just simply diesel buses going up and down the roads. It's got to be far better than that. So the context of this, I think, sits with us each being ambitious in our own areas, us as backbenchers to push you as Cabinet to push yourselves and push the organisation. But more than that, residents like Mr. Heath and Mr. Chubb this evening, who are genuinely passionate about this subject, being encouraged to be part of the agenda that's being set. So as much consultation, as much engagement beyond our four walls as a Borough Council as we can do, to make our strategy something maybe as a blueprint that others could use and others could look to. But I do pick up where Tristan left off, really. Health, equality, the whole agenda around what we can do in terms of planning, building for the future. But I would also make a plea for regeneration in the context of what we could do with the existing town and its existing footprint, of how we can improve existing buildings that we own or that we influence, for example, with our key partners like Vivid and Sovereign, of the things they could be doing to their stock to help improve energy efficiency, improve the whole agenda around energy production and energy access, that would be very helpful. So yeah, thank you for being able to see the strategy come forward. love it to be more ambitious. I'm going to push you on that, but I recognise where you're at on it and want to work with you on it.
As Mao said, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first steps. So I'm not used to quoting Mao, but occasionally it is pertinent.
I never thought I'd ever hear you say, Ken, but I'll give you that.
Correct. You mentioned regeneration, and our cabinet member for Regen, Councillor Isaac, may want to add something into that reuse of land. I don't know. Do you, John? I'm forcing your hand here.
Yes, it's important that we do that, and that's why when we are developing new buildings, it's central to our purpose that we make sure that that those buildings are built to high standards. And again, looking ahead in relation to many down north, then that is a top priority, something that I'm constantly reminding officers about. And also in my conversations with Urban and Civic, that's something that is a priority, but it's also going to work to everyone's benefits if we can achieve those objectives, because it'll be better for the people living in the houses, and it'll actually make the houses last longer and be more attractive to future purchasers of those properties. So there's a win-win in this. As long as we keep our feet on the ground, which is always something that we need to do.
Thank you for that. Councillor Eaches or Rafael, anything that you would like to add to Councillor Harvey's points?
Well, I'd like to say that I'm very happy with what Councillor Harvey said. He knows that we agree on these sorts of things, and we share ambition. We may not agree on every point, but we're moving in the right direction, and I look forward to working with him as we look at the policies in the local plan. God willing, for both of us, the other side of an election.
Thank you for that, Mark, and that reminder that we're all at the mercy of our public, so that's good. Anyway, then I'd like to move to Councillor Andy McCormick. You have 4 minutes on this very important climate change and air quality strategy.
Thank you, Leader. Well, I will pay tribute to the submissions by Miranda Chubb and Martin Heath, because they have said quite a bit of what I wanted to say. In particular, I had in capital letters quantitative performance metrics, which they've both touched on. Now, I appreciate this is a first stab at an evolving document, and it will be reviewed on an annual basis, but I cannot overemphasize the importance of that. And while the tables in the back are excellent, they do have some tangible goals and milestones. Just looking within the detail of the papers just for a minute, on page 317, we had a 19% reduction under the previous strategy in 3 years, and a reduction of a third since 2010 on page 232. Now, there are signs that it is slowly accelerating, but we need to accelerate further if we're going to meet both the targets, the very ambitious targets that we have set ourselves. Other councils have gone for much more easy targets to meet, maybe 2050 or something like that. We don't have that much time. We have to limit our emissions, and we have to start looking at carbon sinking and things like that. That will come in due time. But to try and prevent this 1.5 degrees C rise since in the last 100 years, we are really up against it. So I welcome the thoroughness of this and the bold objectives. Just another point, when you look at page 283, we've had 22 meetings since declaring a climate emergency, and that might indicate just how complicated this is and how cross-cutting it is. And it's good to see an action plan, but I think now is the time for action. And we have a delivery board, and the residents will expect them to deliver. We'll expect rapid progress on this. And I think I welcome the very bold and ambitious assertions by Councillor Harvey and others about improving the energy efficiency of our buildings, our partners' buildings, and also taking into account what Martin Heath said about making sure that we don't discount certain sources of emission like air travel or agri. There are no concessions in this climate change business. We have to take into account of everything that's going on. And there is a massive golden opportunity there in terms of the emerging green economy, green tech. And we are one of the fastest expanding tech hubs in the country at the moment. So I welcome this wholeheartedly. And I just hope that we can take this forward. And I would like some assurances that we have thought about how we are going to accelerate this, not least in conjunction with Hampshire County Council, who seem to have less ambitious targets than we have. And what hope do we have of bringing them on board with our more ambitious targets and helping put them on the map as well? Thank you.
Thank you for that suggestion that we take over Hampshire County Council. I will store that for the devolution debate, but I will thank you for your support when we move that forward. Hayley, any comments to Councillor McCormick's comments to you?
No, again, it's just the same for both Councillor Harvey and Councillor McCormick. Take on board with their points. They make extremely valid and good points. I don't disagree with them. And yes, it is ambitious, and yes, we all have a lot to do, and we've all got to work at this, and I want to be part of that. I'm glad that the opposition want to be part of that, and I think, you know, we all seem to be singing from the same hymn sheet, and that's a positive thing. We just need to push it forward now, and we keep saying it's ambitious and we have to accept that, but we will get on and do these things.
Just to your point, Councillor McCormick, even Lewis Hamilton is slowest away from the start line, but as time goes by, he accelerates and gets to the pace that's required to win the race. So I just give you that as a thought, as he's just signed a new contract. So anything else from Cabinet that would like to make comments to the strategy? Or are we content that this is a living and breathing document and one that can adapt and changes as circumstances change or evidence comes to us that we will need to adapt our world to take account of what's happening around us? Is there anything else? No, then I thank you for your debate on that, and certainly the points that were made by Miranda Chubb and Martin Heath, who we value as people who have expertise in that area and who always add something to our debates. So I thank you for that. That is tonight's agenda finished. So I'd like to thank you for your time and your patience to be with us. There are no confidential items on tonight's agenda, and therefore Cabinet tonight is finished. I look forward to seeing all of you in the weeks to come, and of course for that very important budget debate later in the month. So thank you for your time, and